Fantasy news must flow! Welcome to Fantasy News, Goblin fans. I am Crimson Rogue, taking over for Daniel Green this week as he is currently suffering the worst recorded case of cognitive dissonance in history when he discovered that Wheel of Time Funko Pops were a thing. Now, because I was given no guidelines on how to actually do this, and I was just told to have fun, I get the cheat, because this week we had the Nintendo Direct. Nintendo announced a number of titles they're working on over the next year with their Nintendo Direct stream on the 13th. And while there was a very unfortunate and noticeable lack of Metroid Prime remakes, there were a number of good titles out there. Tales of Symphonia is getting a remaster that's due out early 2023. It was one of the earlier entries in the Tales of series, so it does have a more simplistic graphic style, but the gameplay is a lot of fun. It was actually the Tales of game that got me into the series. Still not as good as Tales of the Abyss, but that's kind of the peak of the entire series in my opinion. If you like a good immersive storyline in a game, Tales of Symphonia is one to check out, because even if you're trying to speed through things, you're talking about a 30 to 40 hour game. Speedrunning not with counting, I have no idea what kind of glitches and stuff you can exploit with that game. It's got fun characters, exciting combat, lush world, good story. I say check it out if you get the chance. There's also a remake of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core called Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion. That's a mouthful. Set before the events of Final Fantasy VII proper, it's a wacky, fun story where you get to follow Cloud's best buddy, Zack.
Hey Vegeta, we're friends now, right? Fuck off. The best.
They also stated that they're updating the combat system, and it looks like the same one that they used in Final Fantasy VII Remake, so if you like the combat in that, you'll probably want to check this one out. And apparently farming sims are in fashion because there were a surprising number of farming titles. Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life, Fae Farm, Rune Factory 3 Special, Harvestella. They also announced Pikmin 4, which is awesome, but because it's a story about how you pull these little flower creatures out of the ground, I'm calling that a farming sim as well. Probably the biggest announcement we got of the whole night was that we finally got a title and release date for the sequel of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. While we didn't get too much of a look at it, it does look like a combination of Breath of the Wild as well as Skyward Sword, because there are a bunch of islands floating up in the clouds. What precisely is this going to mean for the story? What's this going to mean for the advancement of the storyline from Breath of the Wild? I don't know, but frankly, if you've got the same team working on it, I'm hyped for it. The release date has been announced as May 12th, 2023 right now. Hopefully that doesn't get delayed, but remember, if it does, they're just trying to make it as perfect as possible, and we should be a little patient. Considering the track run that the Legend of Zelda series has, it's probably going to be pretty good. Moving away from video games, we have an announcement from the king of Kickstarter, Brando Sando. After Brandon Sanderson's surprise 4 secret novels Kickstarter racked up an astonishing $41 million, he and his team are back with another project, the Stormlight Archives Premium Miniatures. Spoiler warning before we get into this, apparently there are spoilers on the Kickstarter page, so if you haven't read the books yet, proceed with caution. I will not be giving spoilers, but if you want to visit the page yourself, you've been warned.
Why we decided to do this one, and why we're so excited about it, I think it is incredible. The work that Brotherwise has done on making these minis look right is just outlandish. The amount of effort they've put into, and the amount of effort Isaac and his team here have done in concept art to make sure that these characters look great, is wonderful. So
these are little tabletop miniatures that got funded in a couple of minutes. Now these are premium miniatures. Some of them are, about yay size, normal tabletop game kind of thing. Some are pretty big looking. The Kickstarter states that these are all going to be fully painted when they arrive, and they're going to be a number of characters. It looks like the estimated delivery is going to be for July of 2023. And at the time of filming, they have requested $50,000, and with 7,163 backers, they have made $1.5 million. This has been up for one day. So if you would like an official collectible of Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives, head over to Kickstarter. You've got a few weeks left to pledge some money.
You can't keep me down.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I may be in California, but you can't keep me from the news. I have powers some may consider unnatural. It's called pre-recording a couple days before. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to some news stories. Christopher Paolini has given fans quite the large writing and adaptation update in one single twatator. Dragon Book editing, Fractalverse nearly done. To Sleep in a Sea of Stars show moving along, slow but not stopped. Aragon show, early stages but moving fast. Unity print copy release approaching, and all trending to Baby Furiosa. Of all of this, I'm most excited, quite obviously, for another Aragon adaptation that could actually do that book justice, as well as seeing the Fractalverse continue to develop, because while I didn't love the first book's narrative, I really liked what it was setting up for a world, so I'm excited to step back into that universe and see how it's going to evolve. Next news! Paramount Plus has already begun development on Halo Season 2. Why? And finally, before I pass it on over to our wonderful guest host, whose channel I do highly recommend you check on out, Wheel of Time is getting a new map for that new companion book that's coming down the road. This is being called the Fixed Wheel of Time map. As you can tell, Shan-Chan has been greatly extended because apparently in the original publication, Robert Jordan didn't want it to seem like it was smaller than the mainlands and just made up a bunch of different islands, but instead had its own weight, which makes far more sense for the story due to what comes from there and affects the main country. I don't want to, get any more into details because spoilers, but generally I just think this is a really good improvement for the Wheel of Time world. But anyway, back to today's Fantasy News host.
Moving on to TVs and movies this week, we've had a number of announcements, starting with The School for Good and Evil on Netflix.
Every so often, a very lucky candidate from the outside is selected for admission to this hallowed institution.
This is adapted from the international best-selling series by Soman Chenani. The School for Good and Evil is basically where fairy tales come from. You've got a school that teaches some kids to be heroes and some kids to be villains. Personally speaking, this is one of those ideas that could be very clever, but also raises a lot of questions. You're telling me you are training people to be evil. You are willingly, knowingly training people to potentially kidnap and murder people. That is just... okay? I mean, I guess Hogwarts got away with it, so why not this place? Now, I haven't read the book, and obviously haven't seen the show, so maybe there's an in-universe explanation for why they do this, like maintaining a balance of power or something. We'll have to see. It was written and directed by Paul Feig and stars Sophia Ann Caruso, Sophia Wiley, Kerry Washington, Charlize Theron, and the big man himself, Lawrence Fishburne.
Our graduates live the very real events, which become the stories.
It looks like it has decent special effects, but it also seems like it suffers from a lot of standard YA tropes. The protagonist is effectively treated as the chosen one, and whatever choice they end up going with is gonna either save the world or kill everyone.
Dangerous evil is here. We have to protect Sophie.
If Sophie becomes evil, none of us will survive.
And let's not forget that Netflix has screwed up on adaptations on a number of occasions before. Death Note. But let's at least be fair and wait for this to come out so we can properly judge it then. The School for Good and Evil will be out on Netflix on October 19th, just in time for Halloween. Seems fitting, actually. Moving over to Marvel, fans will be happy that Charlie Cox, after his appearance in Spider-Man No Way Home and She-Hulk, is getting his own series again.
Your show? I think you mean my show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Cox, Daredevil, Born Again.
Unfortunately, it is not a continuation of the original Netflix series. The series will be called Daredevil Born Again and is more of a reboot than anything else. At the D23 Expo where this was announced, Daredevil himself, Charlie Cox, announced, "It is a Season 1, it is not Season 4, so it is a whole new thing," which I think is the way to go. If you're going to do it again, do it differently. Which is unfortunate because I loved the original Daredevil series. That hallway scene, classic stuff. Not to mention Vincent D'Onofrio was the perfect pick for Kingpin. If I had to speculate, I would say that Daredevil Born Again would follow a more jovial, lighthearted air as opposed to the grim and gritty feel of the original series, as well as the other shows in the Defenders universe. That does seem to be the direction that most MCU shows and movies are going these days. Whether or not that's actually a good thing, I don't know. Plus, there's the question of how is this going to fit into the MCU at large? Again, I don't know. Considering how abruptly they announced the end of Phase 4, it doesn't seem like they have an overall plan they're really working towards, so one can hope for the best. If nothing else, Charlie Cox is at least having fun with the character, and he says that he's been rereading the DareDevil catalog from the beginning. Daredevil Born Again is expected to drop in spring 2024, presumably on Disney+. Although, if you want to get the original series, the first 3 seasons of that, as well as the other Defenders limited series, are also available on Disney+. But Netflix isn't done, as they have just wrapped up production on Season 3 of The Witcher and have already greenlit Seasons 4 and 5. Several months ago, director Steven Surgic revealed that Season 4 of The Witcher was already being mapped out by the producers of the show. But on top of that, apparently the plan is to work on Seasons 4 and 5 back to back. Considering that each season of The Witcher thus far has taken about 5 to 6 months to produce, this will be a lot of work for everybody involved. We're not sure how exactly they're going to be able to schedule all of this, especially considering that there's currently no word on when filming is going to start or what they're even going to be writing about. Some early speculation states that Season 4 may come out in 2024, with Season 5 coming out in 2025. Apparently the next 2 novels being adapted are Baptism of Fire and The Tower of the Swallow.
With gusto.
No! This is a family-friendly channel! Stop that! But considering that Baptism of Fire is very focused on Geralt, and Tower of the Swallow is very focused on Ciri, you could have these books broken up into different sections, smashed together out of order, kind of like what the first season was. Or maybe they'll smash both books into Season 4, and Season 5 will adapt Lady of the Lake. Best case scenario, each book will be able to breathe on its own in its own season, but who knows? This is still very early news, so a lot of things could still change. We might not get anything until 2026 as far as we know. What we do know is that Season 3 is in post-production and is scheduled for a 2023 release, and the prequel series, Witcher Blood Origin, is currently scheduled for a Christmas release this year. In our final story, I'm sure fans of this channel are familiar with the long-running manga by Oda Sensei about the magic pirates after the mystical treasure, the One Piece. Well, somebody took almost all of it and put it into a single book. A One Piece, if you will.
I'm going to drown you. I'm going to drown you like a sack of dumb puppies.
A French artist who specializes in creating pieces on post-digital comics has combined almost everything of One Piece into a 21,450-page book that is not a typo. While the entire thing is designed as an art piece as opposed to an actual book, it is still entirely legible and theoretically could be read, if you can somehow open the book without tearing the spine open under its own weight. This ridiculous art piece measures 4.7 inches by 7.2 inches by 31 inches and weighs 38 pounds. This thing is bigger than a standard fire extinguisher. Assuming you could wield it, you could actually use this book as a weapon. This single collection would basically be an infinite ammo cheat code for Yomiko Reedman. Credit to you if you actually got that. This is the sort of book that you buy not to read, but purely to show off and display somewhere in your library. It is a stupid idea, it is an impractical idea, it will barely fit on a standard bookshelf. I hate it, I want it, I hate that I want it. Give me a copy, it costs $1,900 and it's sold out. Now obviously One Piece is still going on, so maybe this art piece will continue on eventually. Maybe you'll get an expansion, maybe there'll be a second log you can buy. How many trees does this take to make? I can't think of a lot of books that I would describe as unwieldy, but this is one of them. The art piece was being sold by JBE Books, a French publisher, and a copy of the art piece was on display at the Fimenco Foundation in Paris, France. I would criticize the people who bought these gaudy displays, except I'm sitting on a throne made entirely of books, so I don't have room to judge. And that was your fantasy news of the week. If you don't find my voice grating and you don't mind an aggressive use of memes and referential humor, then you can check out more of my stuff over at Crimson Rogue on YouTube, where I break down terrible books for hours at a time with my patented tab system and try to teach people how to become better writers. Because sometimes the best lesson is a bad example. Also, I'm very bad at planning outros, so here's a confused puppy waving at you.